Shall we kick off? Good morning. It's us again, recapping. And I'll start and Sylvie will come in. So day one, we spoke yesterday, was all about the issues we are collectively facing. And yesterday on Thursday, we were much more asking, where do we go now? Things started to get real in their discussions, I felt. We started to think about solutions, about concrete actions that we can take, but also where we can use our advocacy and our influence to ask others to take. And we're starting to see ideas pitched, development pathways charted, calls to action. I'll focus on three areas again, and I'll try and reference how some of those ideas and strategies. So firstly, throughout the day, we recentered the artist in our discussion. We heard Gertrude Stocker and Pooja Sood, their optimism that we could harness the power of AI rather than being swamped by it. And to do so, we need to support artists. Gertrude described them as the true risk takers in our society. And they traded stories of playful but actually impactful creative interventions, and artists sneaking music onto customers' mobile phones or tricking the algorithm to stop traffic in a busy area. So there was optimism, but it wasn't all positivity. We recognized digital exclusion for those that don't have the internet or experience government shutdowns, and reminded that that mirrors wider structural inequalities internationally. And Professor Lee reminded us of the Western views and biases in data and in data sets. And he asked us to go beyond digital literacy. He talked about the importance of critical thinking in our schools, in our industries, and at our national level, and asked what would it mean to have a certificate of AI. So in this context, we talked a lot about artists' livelihoods through the day, social protections, rights for cultural workers, working conditions, remuneration. Really rich discussions. I think it's a disservice to try and summarize them. To be honest, there was so much in there. But Cicely Jacobs reminded us that labour laws, at least in terms of minimum standards, are actually often in place. And generally, we were asked to move away from conversations about simply protecting cultural rights to structurally, how do we enable them? Hayun Talima helped us with a deep dive, helped me certainly, into the WIPO approach to intellectual property as it relates to traditional knowledge carriers, and stepped us through 25 years actually of thinking and negotiation towards international policy instruments. We took a deeper dive into the music sector, and that showed us how both within the sector and within subsectors and internationally across regions, what complexity lies there. And in the digital environment, Michaela Mantega warned us of taking a reductionist binary view of our options between scaling up tech and regulation. And we recognize that copyright has rarely actually been a strong tool to protect creatives. So what other policy interventions might there be? We looked at universal basic income. Cicely gave us the example of the Korean system with employment insurances and emergency benefits built in. We talked elsewhere about how better statistics might support our advocacy. But ultimately, when we took a show of hands, we found that even where national strategies were in place, only a tiny amount are actively referencing the creative and cultural sectors. Secondly, very strong discussions through the day looking at Indigenous rights and traditional knowledge. In the afternoon, we had a powerful discussion on these topics with participants speaking from their lived experience. Takeaways, many of them, but for me, the sense that our capacity efforts need to be redoubled in not so much in Indigenous communities, but actually in the cultural organisations in the countries where they're located, in national governments, arts councils, onwards and upwards into the UN and others. And we actually have two clear recommendations from this group that the national arts councils and agencies benchmark their future policy formulation against the 2007 UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and that Ithaca develops a charter of Indigenous protocols to promote decolonisation. So very strong, tangible recommendations coming out of that group. And I'll finish on question of culture and conflict. We discussed in the afternoon responsibility and solidarity, and there were echoes of Mr. Chong's introductions when he discussed the echo chamber in Korea, polarizing political discourse here, which he described as the biggest political social issue in his country at this time. And in the afternoon, we heard from Myanmar, in the Syrian diaspora, and in Northern Ireland, we heard how arts and culture can provide connectedness that bypasses political hierarchies, and how arts can rehumanize. I'll finish there, and I'll let Sylvie come in with her observations and thoughts.
Buenos días. Hoy voy a conversar con ustedes.
I would like to talk in English today. I would like to start expressing that summarizing all of these works and sessions and experiences is a great challenge for me. Although we have the curation and design of the space is very consistent. So I would like to share with you some impressions just to remember of our pathways and our map in this culture. So we saw the richness of context and the equal distribution of the word. Yesterday, we all discussed that we identified important gaps between different nations. So the data collection, the coverage in countries, programs, plans, technology, soil, education, health. So in all of these areas, we identify gaps. And we also saw a lot of difference between territories and countries. And also, we have different contexts in our institutions, how they work. And also, we saw the realities of different states. So we need to deepen our tools in our sector and to search and seek diversity in each state. But we are having limitations in our states because we are having a little lower protagonism in each of our states. And we just cannot trust in institutionality because social polarization is at risk. So we are facing a great difficulty. So this would be the negative present or context in the present. So this generates but also this also brings to us a great opportunity. But in different states, it is not perceived this opportunity at the same level. We also have many losses, which seem sometimes as a big loophole that we cannot fill. So culture and development, many of the times, is not seen as something that we can go strengthen in parallel. And before these circumstances, the empathy will be important. So as we are not in the same condition or as we are not in the same shoes, we need to have a better understanding and make an effort to reach a better understanding each other. And it is very important, the empathy, just like the example of this event. So we need to actively listen to the opinions of others. And what surprised to me and moved to me is the diligence that has been prepared this activity. And also the input has been collected, not only through this week, but they are working in a very detailed manner. So they are distilling all the information and they're simplifying the main core messages throughout this event. So this is a space for resonance. And for me, this seems like a pressure, very precious at the present moment. I want to tell you why. First, I think about the debates on participation, inclusion, social participation, and I can think of certain groups. They are working with cultural rights. And also, it is very important to have care, to listen, to hear from the opinion of the others, to have sensibility. And in one of the sessions has been mentioned that there are no window or door that can be open, although very little, and then you cannot close it totally. So when we start, we have to give a continuity to our work. And 25 years have been passed since we started to work with many of the tools, but has not been consolidated. So we also listened about the lack of listening to other voices, and this is we are not having plurality. We don't have a space for good consultation, but we also have a good news, which is the compromise and consistency of our colleagues and listening to them and sharing our opinions. So that will be the treasure, the empathy, and the care that we are applying here, and we are being a part of it when we are passing through turbulent times. And the alliance and conflict between nations and between continents, the guarantee, the continuity of different agendas such as the SDGs, it has a very complex architecture. So are working to find solutions amid all this turbulence. We don't know what is going to bring these changes. We don't even know what evolution or crisis will come to us. And in the last assembly of UN, we heard that there are changes in priorities in the latest months and years, and this process can be deepened. So, amid this context, we need to create a roadmap. That is the work we need to do. We need to identify how to go further, how to work together. We need very clear steps, including the multilateralism. So since the start, we asked for roadmap for polycrisis context in our polycrisis context, and in niching, and many suggest how to deal and face this crisis. So we need to strengthen for a little difficulties that may come ahead. The collaboration and the help from each other is very important. We need to support to strengthen our internal strength, to internal structure, and do not fear changes. And when we need to take action, we will take action. And when we need to wait, we will wait. All these are very suggestive, and this is a very important recommendation. Well, in words, it is easy to understand, but to make it concrete is not an easy work. So we hope that the compromise in our action is important. We need to understand this. And the turbulence has to be a part in our map to sustain ourselves and to go ahead knowing that we need to prepare. And I want to just skip all of the details because I cannot go deep into all the themes. But also we found some very potent and strong alternatives. And yesterday we talked about the AI. There are complex processes in our laws. And we can also have virtual seminars, although it is very small, to keep updated in the information in our global context. Also, we see different positions, and this is what I said and mentioned in the start. So, a problem is not just for one nation, but it is a problem for all of us. So, we need a minimum of language to share, think in plurality, and we need strategy for our reality. And ultimately, I want to mention that I'm worried because I don't want to sound pessimistic. I'm not sure if I express myself good enough so that I didn't sound too pessimistic. 1 second, please. So, I'm very emotional. Because I'm very moved because of all of resonance. So we found that resonance in this space and the generosity I found here. We shared knowledge, experiences, compromises, and that has to be valued. It's very precious. Our seat of the strength. So for some of us we can have tears just like me. Thank you very much for being part of all of this process.
Great, thank you all. Making some of this real, the work plan, keeping some of this energy that we have in this safe space to take back at the end of today. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. So wonderful to see everyone. So my name is Michelle Chawla. I am the CEO of the Canada Council for the Arts and newly elected board member of IFICA, and it's my absolute honor to facilitate this session with my wonderful colleague Andres.
Muchas gracias, Michelle. Es un gusto.
Thank you very much, Michelle. It's a very great pleasure to share this open floor to reflect, to have a opportunity to share and rethink some of the ideas that we get after this kind of summit.
Over to you. We really want to have an engaging session, a participatory session, where we open the floor to your thoughts, your commentary, your ideas, your observations, calls to action. All we ask is that we remain open and respectful. We have many different perspectives in this room, and we want to encourage an open and respectful dialogue. So please engage and share with us all of your thoughts. I mean, it's been an incredible few days. And we know, so the themes around the future of arts, knowledge systems, agency, participatory systems, connectedness, digital systems, technology, it's been an incredibly rich and engaging few days. And we would now love to hear from you. Concrete actions, thoughts. So
Yeah.
this session is we will speak in English and Spanish, but we have, of course, the translation. So we are very lucky to have the opportunity to speak in Korean, Spanish. Je parle aussi français. S'il y a des francophones, n'hésitez pas. Over to you, Andres.
Así es. Así que queremos ver
Yeah, we would like to see many raised hands to share what they think, what you think. We shared when Christine Danielson, the chief of IFACA, said during the opening session that our idea is about the future, and if we go back to our office, our two agencies or our countries tomorrow, to our daily life, with an optimistic idea about the future, we would have been this summit very productive. And not only here, but in any of the parallel sessions, there was very many ideas, optimistic ideas. Okay, who will start? Who will be kicking off? Okay, don't be afraid.
So please raise your hand if you'd like to break the ice, as Andres says, and we will bring a mic to you. Yes,
Ya tenemos la primera.
right in the middle.
The first one.
I'm Kajsa Ravin from the Swedish Arts Council. Well, the Swedish Arts Council will continue to try to safeguard artistic freedom and safeguard the space where artists actually can thrive. So we will try to do that in our daily work in Sweden. We will try to do that on the international level, definitely in UNESCO, reminding everyone, also at Mondia Cult, that this space cannot shrink, it has to expand, and we will try to do that. So that's one reflection and call for action.
Wonderful. Yes, in the corner.
Hi, my name is Nguli. I am South African artist currently living in Sweden. And what I'm taking from the last 2 days is the need for a South-South conversation. And I think that's the other thing that I took is how do we change, and I'm coming from an artist perspective, how do we change the fact that the West makes all the rules of engagement? And so my question is, as a designer or an artist, where do we start? If I want to collaborate with somebody from another global South institution as an artist, we often depend on money from Europe. And so how do we actually start engaging? And how do we change the policies of like the rules of engagement and from where we are? So that's what I wanted to ask.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that question. So the idea is that we're not responding to these it's to help the room continue to think about these very profound questions, and hopefully it'll inspire more conversations
Claro.
during our breaks and the rest of the sessions.
Sure. Quizás alguien quiera responder.
Maybe if someone wants to answer that question, so we can have an interaction, just like an open session or open table. There we have another comment.
My name is Tazo Enes. I am from Cameroon. And I'm not here to answer the question that she raised, but to add to what she said. Actually, my worry today is about cultural colonization. Cultural colonization because of the development of technology. Now, today we find a situation where the advanced north, which some people address as the global north and the global south. As far as I am concerned, there is just one globe. There's no global north and the global south, because that is what is causing the division and cultural colonization. Now, to sustain our culture, we have to address this issue of culture colonization. Also, another thing that I was expecting to hear in this summit is cultural acceptability. Because in today's world, if you see the conflicts here and there, it is not only because of the economic interests, but because of cultural diversity. So this discussion should go further to look at how people can live harmoniously, accepting the values of each and every culture, so that we can have a harmonious world. That I didn't see, I didn't listen to in this summit. Thank you.
Thank you. Very important point.
¿Alguien más?
Anyone else? So for me, I'm Argentinian and I speak Spanish. Can I have any comment or questions from my South American colleagues? There we have Paraguay. Yes, it's good to listen Spanish here and then because we are just immersed in English. We need to decolonize the language too. So in reality, I think all the debates here were very important, and a very main theme of this summit was the artificial intelligence. And for the next theme for debate could be include AI and include indigenous communities and how they are impacted by AI, so that they are not excluded once more in this process of the reformulation of culture with new technologies. I think that is very relevant. In our country, we are having the situation where we are thinking how include more the indigenous communities and they become the main actors. That will be our vision. Include themes that will be very relevant directly to them and to protect the intangible legacy of them. Thank you, Teresita. And the AI was very transversal, right? In this summit, in all the table sessions were discussed. Micaela, I can hand over the microphone to you. So what did you think on this summit? Did you have any takeaways?
Thank you very much for this space, and I'm going to speak in Spanish now. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak about this kind of issues. And it's very related with Teresita's speech that we have to have this idea. When we coin a word, we are creating a reality. So, and that word are reflecting our identity. So, who are developing the technology? The global north. Then it's a very difficult debate because we choose how to be represented and what kind of images we want to represent, or by other side, we allowed us to be reflecting only the what is offered by the world. So I'm very grateful to having this opportunity to have this kind of open floor. I invite always to my peers to bring us their ideas. Yeah, this is good because this is a call for action to be more active, more participative. And if I can make a question, who are taking for the next summit? Who can take the idea of universal basic income or salary? Can anybody answer?
Yes, yes. Hey, yeah. Hi. I'm Darina Zhivakadova from Ukraine. Just also wanted to say some takeaways from today and from So the last days, firstly, thank you everyone for the meaningful discussion. I think this is also very important that we have really meaningful discussions throughout these days. And, 3 words that I put as the main takeaways. First thing, it was already said here, the values, because, for example, at our session yesterday, we talked a lot about humanity. So it's like a standard value, but it's so actual nowadays. The second thing is it's people. So whenever we talked about different topics, different sectors and different technologies, we're back to people, to cultural professionals, to artists, to policymakers, to researchers. So it's also about us and how the working conditions, the mental health, and how we can really support people who work at all these organizations. And finally, for me, it's about skills. So because we see now with all this discussion that the world is transforming so quickly, and we don't know what we will address during the next forum. But we need to be agile, we need to be flexible, and it's really a question which skills we need to now to adapt and to transform so that to be ready that what the future will take us. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have a question here. There's some more coming. So we have some questions also that people submitted in writing. So we'll take a comment from the gentleman here and then over here, and then I can read a few just to make sure that everyone has a chance to have a voice here.
네, 감사합니다. 저는 한국어로 하겠습니다. 저는 한국에서 독립
I'd like to speak in Korean. I am an independent planner and artist, and I can see that ever since COVID-19, the whole world is facing common challenges. And so I believe that creating a discourse that is universal is very important, and I think it's very meaningful that such a discourse is being shared at this summit. As I am working in Korea, there are some concerns that I do have. For example, when we talk about art and culture, it actually is quite limited to content. And so it seems that there is over-expectation of economic results of our activities. And there is bureaucracy around the world. And because of the very high administrative processes, we are seeing that our art and culture is being overly controlled by administrative processes. We need to concentrate on the intrinsic value of art and culture. I really believe that that is very fundamental. Art and culture. We have to see the intrinsic value, and we have to persuade people about the intrinsic value. We have to deliver the value and talk about this value and communicate the value. I hope that policymakers here today will create that communication with artists, so that we can create small changes in the world. Thank you very much.
So as we wait for the next hand to go up, perhaps I can read a few of the comments we've received. Thousands of artists and cultural workers have been killed in Gaza. Cultural and rights agencies have documented destruction of libraries, cultural centers, churches, mosques, universities, and other cultural sites. Why has this not been mentioned here? Another comment, the need for closer work amongst arts councils. Another comment on regulation of AI, and a comment here is the EU is making efforts to regulate AI, but in the world of geopolitical ties, trade relationships, and some countries where AI is leading, how can we, it seems very difficult for individual countries to implement strong AI regulations. Are there any possible solutions? So I think that covers the comments that we've received so far. And please, yes, here.
Thank you so much. My name is Gro Sarau. I'm from Denmark and I'm an artist. I have a practice together with a Mexican artist called Ghost Agency. And so, yes, I'll also speak from the point of view of an artist, I suppose, but also as having been here the past few days, and also due to my past work in arts organizing in Denmark. And I'm incredibly grateful to be here, thanks to the Nordic Culture Fund. And so it's also like a little bit with reference to certain programs that tries to see different ways that artists engage in society and social issues, multilaterally, if you like. And I think it would be great for any future summit if there could be created more space for case examples of how practices engage. And there's this incentive to think that things have to be new, but I think it's more like there's the underground work that everyone here is actually enablers of, right? And I think that we have seen in the spaces that I've been in, like examples being pulled out. And that's great because it helps us all visualize, okay, this is actually the concrete work that takes place in between the institutions as parts of a research project or so. But yes, so it's, I think it's really incredibly productive also for conversations actually on the roundtables to actually have shared some real examples. So if there could be some, more attention to that, and also because we need to inspire and form new narratives as I understand and would support.
Thank you. We had a here and here. Right here, and then right beside you after that.
Okay. So I've been taking some notes, which I'm going to use from my phone to reflect. One of my takeaways is around actions and next steps. That's what's on my mind. Like, how do I translate what I've learned here into actual practical things when I go back? And some of those things include localizing some of the global themes I've been hearing throughout the summit themes. How do I apply those local themes to global themes to local priorities and put them in action? The other one that I want to share is I think we do this a lot, but it would be great to find a better mechanism to strengthen international partnerships between all of us here. There are a lot of great partnerships, but I think there's a lot of knowledge sharing and learnings. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. I mean, I know I've picked up multiple strategies that are being applied in other countries that I could literally replicate. And I plan to do that in order to move things in my own province. Another takeaway is finding a way to share our learnings a bit more broadly. I know Ithaca has a members hub, but it would be great, and maybe it already exists and I don't know, but it would be great if there was some form of hub after the summit where all the participants could just reflect and share thoughts later on how they're actioning some of it and just stay connected. That is a takeaway that I mean, or something I'd love to have. And then there was a session I participated in around future proofing, and I think that's it's something that's really resonating in terms of how do we future proof our own strategies in the arts and cultural space, working together and thinking about all the themes that have come out from the summit and actually having those conversations and sharing back with this group. And then another big one is influencing policy discussions in our own countries, or in my case, province. How can we take away some of the policy pieces that have come out from this global platform to influence our own local policies so they align with those global themes? And then just wrapping up, not to get into wordsmithing, but I think one of the things that I really picked up during the last 3 days is that the words we use to frame conversations in arts and culture really need to be intentional. In one of the sessions, someone asked, why are we saying marginalized? Why don't we use a different term? I've been hearing global north, global south. And I question myself, like, is that a helpful term or is it not a helpful term? Like, really choosing the right language that resonates in the context of a global arts and cultural ecosystem. And that's it.
Thank you. You can
Muchas
maybe pass
gracias. Gracias. Realmente te quiero agradecer esta tarea.
Thank you very much for all the work that you did. I recommended in the start thinking about what kind of work we need to do between agencies after the summit. What transformation are we living in? We need to think about that. And what next? Which is the title of this session. So what's next? And that job that words that you share with us, I think it's very relevant to us. We can go with that after the summit. Hello to everyone. I'm Aika. I'm from Kazakhstan, Central Asia. I'm going to speak in English from now on.
I'm Aika Aleme from Central Asia, from Kazakhstan, and I run an incubator for artists and creators. And I bring an element of creative industries to this discussion. I'd like to say thank you to Ithaca and Arts Council Korea for this wonderful summit. I've been learning a lot. But I'd like to suggest and help. I'd like to be actively involved in bringing industry here because I actually see a lot of harmony between money, business, industry, and culture because in the history of humankind, material success and financial success propels and catalyzes arts prosperity and arts development and culture development. So let's bring those together, not oppose, and not be afraid of money because money is good. And also, I think I would like to help the summit and Ithaca to empower the artists, the creators, the institutions, because the museums and theaters, they can also act as a business institution and make money, not be dependent and begging and waiting for the funding, but actually you can make it run it as a business. And I suggest that we could, just developing on the points that my colleagues shared, we could create incubation for institutions or, NGOs or artists and help them build their projects and put them in front of donors, sponsors, investors, big corporations. I do support, and I can share the methodology. And I do support what my colleagues said about networking. We need to put together a chat and we need to do speed networking, like when in 30 seconds we tell each other when we work the room, because I'd love to meet all these people and collaborate with them, but it's not possible because we're just only like listening. And I'm not criticizing, I'm just suggesting. And what was I gonna say? So yeah, and like pitching the cases, I think it would give us, first of all, give the space and exposure to the actors, empower them, but also let them hear the feedback from all of us. And here we have like, I don't know, tens of thousands of years of experience of seeing things, experiencing. So we just need to synergize and use it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we had just behind you, I think, yeah, you had your hand up first, then you did, and now the third person. Okay. Have I got, oh, in the corner too, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I think it
Por
was
fin este lado.
the person in the back there had his hand up first. There, yeah. And then after it was here. There. I think we've got it. Yes.
Tenés
Go
muy buena
ahead.
vista,
Yeah.
Michelle.
Hello, thanks.
You have a really good eye. See.
I just wanted to feedback. My name's Mitch. I'm from Australia. I'm an independent artist and a researcher. And I wanted to provide some feedback about what I've heard over the last couple of days, particularly feeding back to culture bodies with that question of what comes next. So something that I thought was really valuable yesterday was this idea of what is the culture of solidarity? You know, if we're developing cultural models and solidarity is so important in a time of conflict and polycrisis, what is the actual culture of solidarity internationally? And how do we let empathy inform our practice at every level of organizations? And that goes for artists making work, as well as people funding work, as well as institutional organizations. I'd like to say that I think there's a really clear need to move away from neoliberal economics and the models of defining culture through those systems, which have comprehensively failed to improve the lives of artists and the lives of many impoverished people around the world. And I think that there's a tool for doing that in the idea of moving to qualitative assessment metrics. So using the idea of qualitative assessment rather than quantitative assessment. And that is so important to preserve the space for imagination and futures thinking, which is how we climb out of the kind of current crisis that we're in. Thanks.
Thank you. Over here. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
And I'm just pointing to who's getting the mic next.
Okay, great.
That person.
Thanks.
And then over there, and then over there. Okay, I got
So
this.
my name is Bongi McDermott, and I'm from the Swedish Arts Council. And I must say it's been really valuable, of course, and we're all saying that, but it has been so valuable also speaking, both listening and then also speaking to people on the bus, for example. And I just wanted to actually pick up on something. And I thought about this question about a universal salary for artists. And obviously, like, we listen to it and we might say, okay, that would be fantastic. And how are we going to solve that? And how would that work? And should we use taxes? And tax policy always changes back and forth, or are there tariffs or not, and what have you. But anyway, I thought it was interesting that you've suggested it, but I'm actually coming up behind you because I don't want to say anything wrong. But I had a really interesting conversation with you yesterday on the bus. And I thought this would be interesting for more people to know about that you in Canada actually have been able to get money off one of the tech companies, because we think, how are we going to do it, and how's it going to happen, and to know the different things that have happened. Did you want to tell me? I'm sorry, I started to moderate here, but
This is a real round
I
table.
love it. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I might say the wrong sum
logramos.
otherwise, and I wouldn't want to do that.
Yes, getting me on the spot. And this is my first conference, so I was deciding what to say. And no, I I have a Canadian colleague on the stage who can help out a little bit. But it was an interesting idea to hear about not, you know, when we're thinking about AI and regulation, it was a new idea for me to hear you say that maybe copyright is not the right avenue. So that was a big light bulb that went off for me. And then when we met in the hallway and I asked you, well, what would be a solution if not the mechanism through copyright? And you talked about maybe a taxation or requiring the tech companies to pay. And we have gone through that in a different way in Canada through some couple pieces of legislation that are requiring the tech companies to pay to be able to broadcast news on their sites. And it's been quite controversial. And I don't know that it's worked. I mean, I think the jury is still out on that system. So I'll leave it at that. But I think if that is an avenue for policy, there's a conversation to learn from that experience in Canada. And I know it's not just Canada, there are other countries that have implemented similar legislation for those policies, and it would be interesting to look at for AI. Thank you.
Thanks. Sorry for just doing that. Well, you're the moderator.
No, it's great.
So
I love it. This is exactly what we want. So, but I want to make sure that we get to
just
our...
a little intervention. I was in a long table yesterday, and I really resonate with what you said about artistic freedom and how artists need not to have strings attached to be able to create and not having to be thinking if my artwork is going to put me out of rent. That's why I say, like, universal basic income or creative basic income can kind of like solve two problems at the time. Like, let company pays, we get ourselves from this mess that is copyright that's really complicated. And on the other hand, we can really liberate artists to create the art that they want to create.
So let's go back to our order. I'm sorry. I want to respect the order where hands were up. So I have this person here, over here, there, and I think one more. And we have about 10 minutes left. So we're just going to try and have as many voices. Please, your turn.
예, 반갑습니다. 저는 김해보.
I am Hebo Kim. It's a pleasure to meet you. So thank you for coming to my panel, and I wanted to raise my voice from a Korean perspective, so I'll be speaking in Korean. When we went to Leum Museum, I'm not sure whether you would remember, after we were coming back from the last exhibition, we were on the stairs, there was a very big circle, and I was very much impressed, and I took a photo of that. It was a roundish circle, and myself reflected in the mirror, and it was taken as part of that photo image. As you understand, the circle, half was physical reality and half was a reflected image of the physical reality. So if the physical reality is the intrinsic value of culture, the reflected image would be our different contexts that we're discussing about. In what social context would this reality be reflected? That would lead to different results in terms of the final images that we projected. And taking a step further, I was able to see how beautiful I looked in that image myself, because you have a physical reality and a reflected reality. Only when the two come together, you're able to see the whole, the whole scene in entirety. And I was able to see the value in myself being in that image. My message to you is that I'm learning so much from this conversation. The person that I'm learning, it's the learner. What identity I have, what position that I'm in. Some of you are coming from the artist background or from the public administrator. I'm quasi-public administrator. So I have my own perspectives to bring to the table. And I think it is very important that these people come together and share their perspectives. But our co-staff over here, of course, they're feeding us very well. They're treating us very well. And they're putting so much effort. But the problem is they're unable to we really don't see the presence of people from the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism, people who really need to learn from this conversation. So that is one food for thought. I want to point out the fact that we come from different identities and different awareness and perceptions. And we believe that we can really utilize this opportunity to develop great policies as a result of that stakeholder engagement.
Who had their hand? Yes. And then I think it's over here.
Okay, thank you. And hi, everyone. I'm Emma, also from the Swedish Arts Council. There's 4 of us, so I'm sure you've met all of us or one by now. So in this context, we are the donor. We are funding initiatives to promote art and artistic freedom globally. So of course, I'm thinking about the donor responsibilities, which are plenty. And one of them, I think, that is relevant for this room and people maybe watching online, is to speak to one another as donors, because we're having a very challenging moment right now with funding. The funding landscape is just catastrophic. So the ones that are, we who are still around, I think we need to really coordinate our efforts and synergize as much as possible. So before we came here, we tried to look at all the delegates at the list to see who we should talk to, who we cannot miss, because we need to really work together. So if we haven't found you yet, please let us know that you're here, or just reach out, and we would like to have a dialogue. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. First of all, I want to commend Magdalena and the IFACA leadership for bringing us all together in a space where I have not seen such cultural and linguistic diversity for a long time. So and that's commendable. And I want to go back to the first comment by the South African artist who was requesting that we have more South-South, dialogue. And I want some of you to know it, and I want to recall that after the World Commission for Culture and Development report, our creative diversity, and the Stockholm Action Plan about more than 25 years ago, a number of initiatives were started with South-South dialogue. Australia Council for the Arts, now called Creative Australia, initiated one of the very first ones, and they literally looked at South-South as Southern Hemisphere. And Swedish CEDA developed an excellent program for South-South dialogue, mainly focusing on Africa. And Canada, if you recall, the Minister for Culture, Sheila Cripps, and the whole advocacy and the first meeting of IFACA in Ottawa, Canada supported considerable, in fact, put in considerable amount of resources into South-South dialogue. And in fact, when 2005 convention was adopted, Canada made it possible for the majority of South countries to participate. So we have some excellent models, but the most important thing to remember is those of us who've been through those times, we're passing on. But there's a young artist here talking about, the next generation needs this dialogue in a different context, different parameters, but the South-Side dialogue is important. And the South also includes the diaspora in the global North. So I just want to say that. And the last thing I want to say is, some of you will recall David Throsby's value and culture. It's really important we don't forget. I know that we all struggle, all our institutions struggle with cultural amnesia. We forget what we have done. I think value and culture is really important to come back to, especially if you want to deal with AI or the contemporary realities of climate change and so on. So I feel that you look back into your files, your dossiers, some of the wonderful work that you did on South-South dialogue, but also value and culture. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have only about 4 minutes left, 3 speakers. So if I could ask the last 3 to be very succinct. So we have here, you, and yourself, and one at the end, and then we will. Don't forget, we have the coffee breaks, the lunch breaks, more sessions. So, we'll keep the conversation going, but we will have to just close this formal part in the next few minutes. So I'll pass for the last 3 speakers. Is that okay?
Sí, por supuesto. Esto recién empieza.
Yes, I think it is okay. Let's start.
Good morning. I would like to thank for remembering every subjects we already brought here. The culture of the children and their participation should be considered also because they are very important, especially because we are living in a digital world and the challenges caused by the digital violence is very serious. And digital art would be, we should be very sensible with this. The intellectual activity are very important in the digital sensibility. The last one is we should be focused in the ethic to be able to change the world. Thank you.
I'm going to speak in Spanish. First of all, I have a quick for Micaela about the... Oh, sorry, in Spanish. So, una pregunta sobre...
A question on the minimum salary, universal salary. I have a question. So, do you recommend only for the artists or for everybody? Did you understand? Yeah. So I wanted to know about that. I had that doubt. I will try to be very short in my intervention. Maybe it could be pessimistic. I am a pessimistic person. And I'm a pessimistic person because I learned many things, but not everything was good from what I learned. So that makes me sad. And The AI makes me to have this fear, but I learned that we have to try to understand that this revolution is not the end for everyone. And this is also linked with geopolitics. The geopolitical problems that we have, the conflicts, everything, it makes us to regress and give steps back. And I am not sure if the solution will be the conflict between global north and global south, because there is a lot of north in the south and a lot of south in the north. And in Spain, we have a lot of south too, I could say. And maybe we lost the north. And there was an artist in the street that said that we lost north, but at least we have south. So we have to find our south. And it is very sad because if these great minds that we are having here today, and I got to know a lot of interesting people here, if these people does not brighten our pathway, where can we find light? If multilateralism and democracy goes back, steps back, which is the pathway that we have to take? That is why I am pessimistic.
Yes, the white jacket. No. Okay, yes, I think that to be, but if we can keep it succinct, that would be perfect. And then you can have the last comment.
예. 예, 안녕하세요. 예, 저도 한국어를 한 번 더 하기.
I would like to speak in Korean. I am Im Gi-hyun, and I am working at ARCO. 10 years ago, I had an opportunity to participate in the summit held in Melbourne, and I'm always very interested in the topics set by each World Summit. This year, we are hosting the World Summit, and so staff of ARCO is conducting various activities, but we are also participating in this dialogue to create the discourse. And at the next World Summit, I think we would have more opportunities to ask questions. For Korea, we are going past our economic peak, it seems, and so we do believe that we could be declining some budgets for supporting arts and culture. So maybe at the next World Summit, we will be talking about looking at examples from other countries to find more support for artists and art. And in Korea, we are seeing that we have more multicultural artists and athletes in Korea. And so we are going past the stage where we have a homogeneous group in Korea, but we are becoming quite multicultural. And so maybe we can listen to more of that topic in the next World Summit.
And then we're getting a red warning, get off the stage. So please, the last word to you.
Thank you, and I apologize, but art
Not
is
at
meant
all.
to disrupt. So
exactly, go
as a
for
former
it.
artist, I will disrupt this
Yeah.
space for the region that I serve. I do believe that, as we had discussed yesterday in our long table 20, that climate change is the single greatest existential threat for life on this planet. We've spent a lot of time talking about its sister, more emergent threat, AI. But the question, of course, is in future dialogues, what role can Ithaca play in providing a platform for the sharing of good practice and models, as we had heard so many wonderful examples yesterday. So that was one of the issues that I really wanted to raise, and asking a question around the role of Ithaca, not just as in terms of the biennial summits, but the work between the summits. And yes, while we do operate within the hubs, how do we work across hubs? Because some of those models of good practice are really beneficial. So I guess that's the question. And I did want to also just highlight, I haven't heard anyone speak to the passing of Ngugi wa Thiong'o, Kenyan literature giant, who of course is at the phrase decolonization of the mind is attributed to him. We have spent a lot of time talking about decolonization, but I think we need to spend a little bit more time thinking about how we decolonize our approaches and ways of doing. I haven't heard that. I've heard a lot of the we need to as opposed to the how. So not a criticism, but more a request about how we might be able to do this better and collaborate across the sub-region. So, Vinaka.
Thank you. Excellent. Everyone,
Muy
thank you
bien,
to everyone
muchas
here.
gracias.
감사합니다.
Very critical conversations. And thank you, Andres. And I look forward
Gracias,
to
Michelle.
continuing these conversations for the rest of the day. Thank you, everyone, for your participation.
Muchas gracias. Gracias por participar.
Thank you very much. Thank you for participating with so much endeavor. We have a lot of questions here. We are taking notes. Thank you.
We will now begin the coffee break on the first and second floors of the Arco Arts Theater. For your comfort, additional seating has been specially arranged in the front courtyard of the theater. Enjoy the break and take a moment to connect with fellow delegates.
지금부터 커피 브레이크가 진행됩니다. 아르코예술극장 1층과 2층에 커피 스테이션이 준비되어 있으며 앞마당에도 좌석이 마련되어 있으니 편안한 휴식과 네트워킹의 시간이 되시길 바랍니다.
Dear fellow delegates, the session will begin shortly. Please take your seats and kindly set your mobile phones to silent or vibrate mode. Thank you.
참석자 여러분, 잠시 후 세션이 시작됩니다. 자리에 앉아주시고 휴대전화는 진동 또는 무음으로 설정해 주시기 바랍니다. 감사합니다.
안녕하십니까. 저는 한국문화예술위원회 유병은이라고 합니다.
I am Yu Byung-eun from ARCO. So we're in the final leg of our journey. The reason I'm standing over here is to introduce to you a very special person to the stage. You may already know. So there are two pillars that we have for providing support and funding for arts and culture. First of all, coming from the central government, which is the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism. And also there's another pillar that provides local support. There are 151 chapters under the Korean Federation of Regional Cultural Foundations. And the chairman of the federation is here to celebrate this moment with us. Let's welcome Chairman Kim Gap-soo with a big round of applause.
네, 안녕하십니까. 지금 저는 소개받은
Good morning. As have been introduced, I am Kim Gap-soo. I work at the Chungbuk Regional Cultural Foundation. At the same time, I serve as the president of the Korean Federation of Regional Cultural Foundations. It is indeed a great pleasure to be able to introduce our federation to you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. First, I would like to introduce the Regional Cultural Foundations. In Korea, we have not been able to grow out of the capital area centered culture and art scene. Administration also has capital area centered cultural policies. But in 1995, we opened the era of local autonomies in Korea. We tried to move away from the centralized administration so that we can decentralize administration being led by the locally elected officials. And so in 1997, for the first time in Korea, Gyeonggi Regional Cultural Foundation was established in the province of Gyeonggi. We have mentioned that we have had centralized administration, but now we are now able to open the way for developing local artists, local culture, as well as invite the participation of local citizens so that they may enhance their cultural participation. So interest for regional cultural foundations started to become higher. And so following the lead of the Gyeonggi Regional Cultural Foundation, we have seen the establishment of many regional cultural foundations. In 2014, the Act on Promoting Regional Culture was enacted, and that led to the explosive growth of cultural foundations around Korea. This law has many foundations for regional culture. one of which says that local governments can establish regional cultural foundations in order to pursue projects to develop local cultures. And the law also enables the local governments to provide administrative and financial support. Ever since the enactment of this law, 49 regional cultural foundations were established. Some may be confused with the concept of regional cultural foundations. Of course, there are different foundations that are being conducted through the local companies, but the regional cultural foundations are led by the local governments, and they are mostly funded by the local governments themselves. So they are a quasi-public administrative body. We also need experts to lead the development of regional culture, and that is why we needed regional cultural foundations. Currently, across Korea, in 17 local areas, we have regional cultural foundations, and of the 202 local governments, 130 of them have regional cultural foundations. So in total, there's about 150 regional cultural foundations in operation in Korea, and there are many others who are in the process of establishing their own regional cultural foundations. So we do have the central organization, such as ARCO, that is in charge of the overall country, but in the local areas, these regional cultural foundations are playing their role. So what do these foundations do? There are two pillars to our activities. First, we are looking to promote the cultural ecosystem in the local areas. ARCO, the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism, and other central government agencies are in charge of promoting culture and arts in Korea, but it's very difficult for them to be involved in local ecosystems. So, in order for us to enable people to enjoy culture, to build culture, and to promote culture, we are building ecosystems through the regional cultural foundations. Another important pillar for these foundations is that we are trying to promote the cultural lives of the citizens so that they may enjoy culture in their lives. In particular, we are focusing on diversity of local cultures. We are looking at traditions and festivals that are true to the local areas. Diversity is the power of regional culture and global culture. Through this World Summit, we hope that many activities by the cultural foundations across Korea can be shared with the participants so that we can all contribute to the diversity of global culture. Thank you very much.
Good morning, late morning. Thank you very much, Dr. Kim, once more for that very important explanation and presentation of the diversity across the regions of the Republic of Korea. Once again, Chairman Chung, lovely to see you here and look forward to sharing the stage with you very shortly. Last but not least, our final plenary. It's hard to believe that we're here after so many days of really incredible discussions. And thank you also for the open floor. We clearly had so much more to discuss. And I believe, as both Michelle and Andres said, it's about opening up the conversations and continuing, because here now the work commences. In this panel, Future Horizons Roadmap for a Just and Sustainable Future for Arts and Culture, I am accompanied here by a very esteemed panel, which I will introduce shortly, and via video, and he strongly regrets not being able to be here, Mr. Ernesto Otone, the Assistant Director General of Culture of UNESCO. So I'll introduce our speakers, then we will move to the message from Mr. Otone, and then we will start our discussion. So first, I'd like to introduce Atan Arnold, founder and curator of the Space Botswana Art Gallery Creative Hub. Her work bridges art and climate activism and community engagement, focusing on themes of water, conservation, and sustainable practices. Mrs. Arnold has curated exhibitions across the world, and she leads arts residency workshops, innovations around recycled projects, and a much longer. She also looks to address climate change and the circular economy, and is passionate about empowering marginalized communities. Atan, welcome.
Thank you.
Then you heard her yesterday and today once again to help us and guide us towards Mondiacult, Jasmine Beidag, who's the Director General of Cultural Rights of the Ministry of Culture of Spain. Jasmine, welcome back. Then I'd like to introduce Emil Kairua, who's just been appointed to the Ithaca board. So welcome to our board. Emil is the Secretary and Head of Culture, Head of Ministry at the Ministry of Cultural Development of the Cook Islands, and he has an extensive background in marketing and public relations, driving business development efforts in tourism and travel businesses in the Cook Islands. Previously, Mr. Kairua has held various positions, including being on the first Maori language commission. So welcome very much, Emil.
Thank you.
Then we move to Joe Kukathas. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Joe is the artistic director of the Instant Cafe Theatre Company, and Joe in Malaysia. Joe is an actor, a writer, a dramaturg, and comedian. The theatre company, the Instant Cafe Theatre Company Malaysia, started in 1989 and is best known for its political satire and theatre reflections on Malaysia's diverse ethnic, linguistic, religious, and migratory composition. Joe's work deals with issues of race, religion, politics, gender, censorship, climate change, migration, xenophobia, borders, and so much more. Welcome very much to the panel. So before we start the conversation, could I please request that the video of Mr. Otone be shared on screen? Thank you.
Excellencies, dear participants, it is an honor to address you today as we open the final session of the 10th World Summit on Arts and Culture, co-organized by the Arts Council Korea and the International Federation of Arts Councils and Culture Agencies. IFACA is a long-standing collaborator of UNESCO, and we have been valuing their trust, work, and partnership during all these years. As you know, we are at a pivotal moment in our world, still grappling with a pandemic aftermath, climate emergency, social fractures. The role of culture has never been more critical. More than 2 years ago, at Mondiacult 2022 in Mexico, UNESCO member states declared culture as a global public good. Building on that vision and looking ahead to the next Mondiacult in Barcelona in September of this year, now it's time to turn commitment into concrete actions. Culture is far more than heritage and creative expressions. It is the living fabric of our society. It is a powerful force that brings people together and underpins social cohesion, peace, and security. Culture also drives sustainable development by creating jobs, empowering communities, and inspiring innovation. It should never be seen in isolation. Rather, culture must be mainstream across all policies as a people-centered, inclusive dimension of development. Everyone, especially marginalized groups and youth, must be able to access participate in, and benefit from culture. This means actively upholding cultural rights for all. From supporting artists and creative professionals to empowering indigenous communities to safeguard their heritage, equity must underpin every cultural policy. The digital revolution is reshaping culture, opening new opportunities and new challenges. We must harness digital innovation to widen access to culture while protecting diversity and rights. Our efforts should be invested in bridging the digital divide so that all voices can be heard online and safeguarding artists' intellectual property and expression in the digital space. We also must strengthen the resilience of our cultural and creative sector. Stronger measures are needed to protect cultural heritage and support artists and culture professionals in emergencies, enabling communities to heal and rebuild through culture. A resilient cultural ecosystem will ensure that even in adversity, creative expression endures for future generations. And don't forget that education plays a crucial role in these endeavors. As highlighted by the UNESCO Framework for Culture and Arts Education, integrating culture and education is essential for effective knowledge transmission, nurturing creativity, fostering professional development, and ensuring lifelong learning. By embedding culture in education systems, we empower younger generation with the skills and agencies needed to address global challenges, embrace diversity, and drive sustainable development. Excellencies and dear participants, the dialogue and exchanges held over these days at this summit are critical. Building this future is a shared responsibility. No single government, institution, or community can achieve it alone. All actors in our cultural ecosystem must work hand in hand. I call on governments, international organizations, civil society, the private sector, artists, and community leaders to join forces in this effort. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Otone. And I know that he unfortunately is in, well, fortunately for him, he had to travel and he's in Cusco, Peru. So he couldn't be in two places at the same time. All right, I think we're going to kick this off. And this plenary that we have is really, the idea is to synthesize. I mean, we've heard roundups, we've heard open floor. I think we've been reflecting over the days. So it's not about repeating that, but it's about getting a fresh set of eyes through it, through your perspectives. We've got very different perspectives, different regions, different members of what we could call the arts and cultural ecology here. And that's what we want, the kind of the different perspectives. And also the urgency of where we're going. Really, we need to that roadmap that is going to head us towards not only Mondiacud, which is in very soon in September in Barcelona, where the ministers of culture meet, but also what happens beyond. We even thought about 2050, didn't we, at the World Cafe? So, Atana, I might start with you. Just your initial reflections from what you've heard and where you see things situated, particularly as a practitioner, as an artist, your vision and your concerns in the work that I already explained in your as part of your bio, and giving it that from that African starting point, or viewpoint. The floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Magdalena, for that. Good morning, Dumelang. That's how we greet in Botswana, and our language is Setswana. So I'm a multidisciplinary artist and curator. Botswana is a population of 2.5 million people. It's home to the largest remaining population of elephants in the world. And that is the sound of an elephant that you'd hear if you've ever experienced Africa or been in the Delta or on safari. In your tent, that's of course. And yeah, Botswana is also a leading diamond exporter and a top beef exporter in Africa. But I'm here today to share my lived experiences in the creative industry, specifically visual arts, from a community rooted and climate conscious perspective. So, just to give you a background about the Space Botswana, I founded the Space Botswana in 2019, not knowing that there would be COVID. And this was entirely from I, as an artist, not having the space to create while I was doing university at school. And when I went to the north of Botswana, it's called Maung. Maung is a small safari town, and also known as home of the is the home of the Okavango Delta. So me heading to Maung, my background is also in film and multimedia. I headed there, and I just saw so much potential because it's a tourist town, and looking for ways to try and create a space is not creative, especially when you don't have the resources. So the shipping container of the Space Botswana is a 6-meter shipping container. And how I actually got that shipping container was a man was leaving to South Africa to get a heart transplant, and he needed the funds. So he was relocating and he was selling off his work. He was selling off his properties. So I found the shipping container. I bought it from him. It was in dear state. It's upcycled and recycled. Most of the things in the shipping container or the gallery itself is from like an old restaurant or an old hotel. And that's the model of the Space Botswana. So the space is also actually an acronym. It stands for Sustainable Practical Arts Connecting Everyone Environmentally. And yes, it's the first private contemporary art gallery in Botswana, founded and operated by a Botswana woman. And yes, Maung is also located on your way to the Moremi Game Reserve. Um, I manage close to 12 artists in Southern Africa, and we just expanded. We have the Space Ethiopia now in Addis Ababa, which I launched in March last month. And we also actually, I've been appointed as chairperson of the Spaces Africa. This organization, I founded it because I saw the lack of emerging young galleries around in Africa, and taking artists out there to present them in a different setting. So with my journalism, I've also contributed to international platforms like National Public Radio, reporting on climate change and community resilience in Botswana. The challenges that we face as artists from a local perspective, the private institution working in Botswana's creative sector, we face significant obstacle like systematical issues such as the National Arts Council of Botswana. It's fairly new, it's underfunded, and government alone cannot afford to just work alone. So also from my perspective of being in Maun, a safari town, we as artists found out there's a lot of tourism gatekeeping. For example, we've got mobile safaris. The mobile safari operators demand like bribes to bring tourists to local galleries or like the small communities. So that in itself is already such a major challenge. We've got over 20 lodges and camps in Botswana, in the Delta and in the Chobe. They operate without policies that support local art or artisans. You find out that if you go into the big lodges and camps there, most of the artworks are from different places in different countries. And yeah, that's one thing that I'm also fighting, to try and get like local quality artworks into the lodges and camps so that we can create a sustainable community within a sustainable creative landscape economy. We also have like a problem of the middleman. There's high markups made by the middleman, which also disadvantages the local artists. And Maung has an international airport, and visitors are like, as soon as you get into Maung, you go straight into the Okavango Delta. So there's this huge gap between the tourist or like people coming in, not stopping into the small communities or Maung itself to just explore the rawness of the community and the crafts that the artists make. Curio shops also in the lodges and camps are stocked with imported goods, sidelining local creatives, major concern. That's why we need the strategic policies. And the strategy of the tourism pushes people to look more into wildlife than more into the community. Yes, we know that the wildlife is important and animals are declining, but we also need to find a way of coexisting with the wildlife and the creative industries. Yeah, I feel like the middleman system is broken and excludes creative grounds. So my proposed solution is, we've heard it again and again, that collaboration is key, you know. But for us on the ground as artists, this must be action through systematic change and empowered communities. Regulate art inclusions in lodges and camps and tourism businesses. Ensure that communities near tourism hotspots benefit economically and culturally. Infrastructure to build and support galleries and creative hubs and residencies, and encourage the use of locally sourced materials, traditional craftsmanship, because back home in Maun, we've got the Okavango palm tree. You find that these bracelets that I'm wearing are made out of the palm tree, and artists are also finding a way of making the palm tree a bit innovative by adding in colors. So they would use a plant that is from the area to look for a color. It's using natural ingredients to create a product at the end of the day. Creatives must be part of the national development pals on tourism policies. And lastly, to our fellow artists, policymakers, cultural leaders, and allies, our call to action here from also this panel and from being around like the round tables and the long tables, we need to change our attitudes toward how we value culture. We need to work together across disciplines and across borders. We need to build capacity in rural and undeserved creative communities. We need to ensure tools and financial resources are accessible and localized. We need to invest in social and cultural impact initiatives that go beyond profits. We need to demand and uphold accountability in institutions, organizations, and we ourselves. So, in conclusion, I would just like to say that Botswana has the stories, the talent, the culture, the land. What we need is visibility, investment, and systems that actually work for people, not just for the profits. And the time is now to reimagine African creativity or creativity in general, to be rooted in our communities with sustainability and justice and authenticity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Atan. Thank you. And a really brilliant way to kick it off, setting the tone and the context, and also a call to action. It's interesting, we heard yesterday from models of decentralization about building capabilities, cultural capabilities, keeps on coming up, about the role of culture and how it sits within its dialogue with other spaces and portfolios, and the role we all have to play, and that we can't work in isolation, clearly. That sense of visibility, whether it's analog or digital, is becoming increasingly important. I might move over to Jasmine. So I guess picking up on what the urgencies that Atan has already shared, where do you see, what does our roadmap look like from your perspective?
Gracias. Thank you. I would like to talk about what Atang just said. When I try to answer the question of how to reach new horizons, healthy culture for arts and culture, I think there's a crucial issue to answer first, because we every day we find new crucial issues, and in these spaces we also find the issues. One of the issues would be not giving relevance to the culture. We don't value enough culture, and there is a certain kind of divorce between society, culture, between majority people and culture. because culture sometimes is viewed as something only for cultural workers. When we talk between people who work in culture, we understand the importance of culture, sustainability, peace. But when we go out of our own echo chamber, culture is considered something as prescindible, as a secondary good. So this is behind all of many problems. So that is why we are lacking fund. We don't have enough legitimacy in cultural policies, and the public are not sustainable in putting their interests in culture, and the condition of professionals and artistic artists is not well guaranteed, and we are lacking also the capability to make social transformation. So first, what do we have to do to recover that connection between citizens and professionals from culture? That is the first thing that we need to do. So we need tools also to bring that connection back. Culture needs to be very close to people. We have culture as an illustrated work, and people think that it is for elitists or commodities or consumption. But these concepts make culture to be very far away from our everyday life. So culture rights, we need to consider culture as an everyday practice. William also stressed about this, an author. So people need to understand reality, interpret it through symbolic elements and through emotions. That is not just for specialists or professionals. That would be the first idea. Also, cultural rights enables us to bring cultural policies. And before, the paradigm was not that. First, we have the issue of equality. Who creates culture? Culture is where we have a lot of social inequalities. And in the present, there are distributing resources for those who already have a lot. So yesterday during a session from Britain, the participant told us about this too. We also agree with him. We did a study on this. In Warwick University, they did a study. The culture goes to the 8% of population who already are enjoying culture. And in Britain, say culture is not good for you because the norm is that people do not participate in cultural activities because they are not interested. So only those who already are involved in cultural activities are interested in culture. And there are also inequalities, social, ethnical, gender, and also the disabled people. And we need to recognize that diversity in our society. We need to extend what is the notion of culture for the citizens. And another logic is the transversality of culture. This has been mentioned in a session yesterday when they talked about intersectional reality. So, how culture can have a positive impact in other fields, such like health, environment, and these positive impacts are real. And in the other fields, if they do not consider important, we can approach them. We can go to other fields to give a meaningful effect. Also, we need to revisit the meaning of the institutional role. What role can institutions play? So the institution, what do we need to do is facilitate so that people can develop their cultural lives and everyone could be actors and they become agents of cultural activities. So for many years, we already have been discussing of this. We also need the redistribution of power to define what is culture, to work with culture, and to decide cultural policies, because there can be any agency without power. So that would be very fundamental and important. So to make that reconnection between culture and society, all these efforts are very important, not only in terms of legal framework, but also in public intervention. So in Spain, we are working from that perspective, and that is a theme that we are also going to talk about in Mondia Code this year. We also have a lot, we don't give enough or sufficient value to culture, democracy, etc. Culture can play a big role in all these issues if it is in the center of public debate, can affect other fields. It has that capacity. Thank you very much, Jasmine.
I'm really pleased to hear that we're hearing a lot of reflections, but then also very concrete ways and pathways to action. Might move now to Emile Kairua. Now, Emile, over the last couple of days, we've also had a lot about diversity of narratives. We've tried to curate a program that really sees not this sort of binary of culture and society, culture as a sector, but really intertwined in terms of culture as life, culture as community. Really like to hear your perspective on your reflections and where you see the pathways from the Cook Island and as somebody in the leadership role in your country. Thank you.
Those words simply mean may you live and live long and prosperous, and those are the words of greeting from the Cook Islands. Before I start, Magdalena, allow me this opportunity to pay respect to protocol. I am here on behalf of our traditional leaders of the Cook Islands, our House of Ariki, which is our paramount chiefs, and also the Religious Advisory Council, the people that govern our spirits and our souls, and also our Honourable Prime Minister Mark Brown, and my very own Minister of Culture, the Honourable Choti Angene. I'm here to represent not just the Cook Islands, but an area that covers over 30% of the Earth's surface, and that is Pacifica. I'm a little bit saddened that this area is underrepresented in IFACA, but I give you, Magdalena, and IFACA itself, the commitment that as one of the leaders in our region, it is my intention to bring more of my people to the table. Nothing about us without us is our opinion, and we would rather be at the table to talk about our issues and to share them with you. I know the question is defined, and the approach to our discussion today is also as such. But I wanted to talk about a key issue that we as Pacific Islanders, and particularly in the Cook Islands, continue to face. And this is the fundamental platform that our cultures are based on, and that is our most obvious element of who we are, and that is our identity, and that is our language. The future horizons that we're currently talking about and have been talking about over the past 2 days here at the 10th World Summit lays a global foundation for building a just, sustainable, and inclusive cultural future. But from a Pacific lens, particularly the Cook Islands and those countries in Polynesia, this vision cannot be realized without addressing the ongoing degradation of indigenous languages. Language, ladies and gentlemen, is not just simply a method of communications. It is the soul of our identity. It is the keeper of ancestral wisdom and the anchor of our shared cultural consciousness. Language degradation was a central theme in discussion during an early May 2025 cultural symposium held in the Cook Islands, where Pacific leaders gathered, artists and educators gathered, and cultural practitioners confronted the cultural crisis of language language endangerment. The findings were stark but clear. Without urgent collective action, our languages, and with them our cultural integrity, are at risk of extinction. In fact, in a recent study by UNESCO, the language of the Cook Islands was deemed as being amongst the 10 most endangered languages in the Pacific. And it is within our generation that we must find a way to stop the degradation of our language. The key issues and urgent priorities that we must look at is the loss of language, which is also equivalent to the loss of our identity. In the Cook Islands, the language and the dialects of our islands are either being watered down by foreign tongues or are just not being spoken anymore. The number of speakers is declining not only in the Cook Islands and on the islands, but also in the diaspora. The migration and the intergenerational loss and transmission of the language is also a key issue. And this erosion disconnects us from our past and weakens our cultural resilience. The urbanization and the socio-economic displacement of our people is another key issue that we're having to tackle. One of the key findings from the symposium is that over 70% of our population now lives in the diaspora. Of a population of over 300,000 people, 16,000 live in the Cook Islands and the balance lives in Australia and New Zealand. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, you can understand the issues that comes with assimilation into the environments that our people are now living in, that our culture is no longer playing an important part in their identity and their culture. Climate change and global displacement is something that we have spoken about over the last couple of days. The islands of the Cook Islands are predominantly sand cay islands and atolls. These islands are probably no more than 2 to 3 meters above sea level. Our people are already looking to the future and looking at places like Australia to relocate entire families and entire communities. Now, understand and putting into context, this is not the first time that we have had to do this. Many years ago, many hundreds of years ago, a flotilla of canoes left the shores of Ngatangia to take our people to places like New Zealand. And this is where that migration and the need for improvement started. It's not a new thing. So we are very versatile, we're durable, and we will adapt. But it is a pity that has come from the causes of climate change. The climate change crisis poses an existential threat to the Pacific. Rising sea levels are seen every day. Things are happening at extremes. Where we are expecting wet seasons, the season is extra wet. The high tides are higher than normal. We're also seeing the rising tide levels encroaching on our swamplands, which act as filters to our communities, to our ecosystem. With the removal of that filter system, not only are we looking at land being lost to the sea, but also the swamplands are stopping the erosion of land into the ocean, thus killing the very thing that we place our survival on. Cultural erosion and educational gaps are also something that we need to address very quickly across the region, and most specifically in the Cook Islands. There is a severe shortage of language teachers, teaching resources, and school curricula that reflects Indigenous knowledge. In the Cook Islands, most schools deliver education in English, sidelining Cook Islands Maori and its dialects, and I'm sure this is also happening on those countries that rely on colonial curriculum to teach their children. A language becomes an option in the curriculum and the day of a student. In the past, we have insisted on, and with all due respect to our French-speaking brothers and sisters here, in the Cook Islands, we have at one stage insisted on French being taught in our schools, not Cook Islands Māori. So if you want to put emphasis on the importance of teaching the language in your schools, start with what you've got as a heritage. Examples of language endangerment in the Cook Islands, and I imagine in most Pacific Island countries. For example, in the Cook Islands, we have 3 distinct languages. Cook Islands Māori, which is also the Bible Māori, Pukapuka dialect, which is totally indifferent from all languages in the Cook Islands, and the combined dialects of places like Mangaia, Plenary, and Manihiki. This is now disappearing because the orators and the teachers of our languages are now living in the diaspora. Diaspora communities are also limited in what they can do to promote the use of our language. Resources in the diaspora are very limited. Although our numbers are big in places like New Zealand, they're not big enough for governments of New Zealand and Australia to recognize the efforts that our people are putting into restoring their language. We're thankful for the efforts of organizations like the Reo Vānanga of Aotearoa, who are sharing their resources with our people. The strategic and necessary steps forward for us as Pacific Islands is to introduce bilingual and immersion programs in our schools right across our nations, allowing the very young of our communities to be immersed in the language, to understand who they are and the importance of that identity. Also to develop culturally relevant curriculum, content rooted in local knowledge and systems, and not so much reference to the history and culture of Aotearoa of New Zealand, but also to focus on what is important to each island community. Last, what are we doing? Could you please move my laptop to your other knee? Okay, that's the other knee.
No,
All
I
right.
think, sorry, I think it's the microphone that keeps
Oh,
on choosing.
okay.
But
My
Emil, I
apologies.
might need to get you to wrap it up.
My
Thank you.
apologies. And also we need to invest in community-led language revitalization. Start talking to each other. It is no longer acceptable for villagers to talk to each other, to find efforts to promote and protect our language. We now need to reach across villages. We now need to reach across communities and reach across the Pacific to share experiences on how have you arrived here and what have you done to stop the ebb of the loss of your language. We also need to provide support for each other. Now, this is when we as the Pacific community reach out to organizations like IFACA. I am thankful that I've had the opportunity to listen to Michael in his presentation yesterday and the use of AI to promote the development of language. I now have a tool that I can take home and share with my people as well as the Pacific Island countries who are willing and wanting to change their situation.
Emil, we're going to have to wrap it up
Yes,
so that
of
we
course.
can have
Thank
it. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much. We will have another round of discussions just so we can get through the various perspectives. Joe, you've been very patient. You are very last speaker of the day. Really keen to hear your observations. I know the work you do crosses a lot of the issues that we've addressed over the last days. I particularly think around the participatory systems and what it looks like in the work that you do in your context. Please share your observations.
Right, I just want to share some words that have cropped up in the last few days that I found really interesting, and I want to talk through some of these words. This is the first word, which is time. I'll come back to this word later because we don't have much time. The second word is tradition. So I come from Malaysia, which has home to people from, I would say, practically all over the world, because we've been colonized by so many people. And I don't just mean recent colonization, I mean a time before people called it colonization, but rather they were patterns of migration. I am Malaysian, but my grandparents came from Sri Lanka. Before that, they came from Kerala. Before that, they came from Bihar. And before that, we don't know where we came from. But everyone came from somewhere. We didn't start off where we are now. And I imagine that my nephews and nieces will end up in other places, as they already are, from Seattle to Canada to France. And that is the pattern of humanity, that we are curious, we are nomadic, we move for different reasons. Sometimes we are forced to move, sometimes we move because we want something better, but sometimes because we are curious. But the idea of tradition is something I want to look at, because in Malaysia, we have a tradition of performing arts in one particular community, the Malay community, which is grounded in the idea of ritual and transcending barriers between this world and the next world. So we think always about the idea of spirit, that what is art for? And art is for healing. the healing rituals that are the core of why we make art. Art is when the community is sick, when people are not well. You go to a concert, you hear a piece of music and you feel better. You don't know why you feel better, but something was hurting inside and you feel better. But there are rituals which are specifically designed to heal people, and which also are designed to upend what are power cultures. So, for example, in the performance of Mat Yong, which is the traditional performance, the character of the prince, the character of the most powerful person on stage, is played by a woman, and the men play the fools, because that upends the actual power dynamic that exists in that society. And that's important. We also have the tradition of wayang kulit, which is shadow puppetry, where what is invisible is more powerful than what is visible. What is shadow is more important than what is real, which is also something we need to think about. We're trying to transcend, we're trying to go past what we see to what is more invisible, and that's what artists try to do. The other idea is the idea of travel. Yesterday, somebody said something which really struck me. She's from the Bahamas, Dorinda. I'm sorry, I can't remember your last name, Dorinda. I apologize.
Delaval Grant.
Mm-hmm.
Delaval Grant.
Delaval Grant. And she said, travel is not a trend, it's a tradition. And I think this is something really important for us all to think about, that part of the tradition of being human is to travel, to go places. The Quran says, go even unto China to seek knowledge, because we're constantly on the move trying to find out new things. So when borders become closed, when governments think in terms of, we as people think in terms of nation rather than individuals who are curious, then the nature of humanity changes. And I really want to ask, why are we so content, after just a few hundred years of nationalism, to still think nationalism is the way forward and economic power embedded in nation is the way forward, when humanity actually has the urge to move, not just to stay, to move and to learn and to combine with other traditions in other places. And the other word that came up yesterday in a forum was the idea of trust. And I really love this idea as well. Somebody asked an artist, but how did you get that community to trust you? But you see, it's because she was already doing the work. She's an artist who is sight impaired. I'm sorry, I can't remember your name now. If you're here, please tell me what your name is.
Eva Marie Wang. Eva Marie Wang.
Eva Marie Wang. And she said that the community trusted her because she was already doing the work with blind people. So when people came to ask her what made them trust you, see, her decision to make work was because she felt a need to make the work. And she made the work, and then other people came around her. So that she became a kind of a focal point and a center. So the word trust. And finally, is this word tree, which is maybe my favorite word, because I think about the artists in the way that Mr. Running Wolf talked about the tree in the desert, that this really important tree is growing in sandstone, growing in really difficult climate, in a difficult way, but the tree still grows. Now, the tree is growing there for its own sake. It's not there for anyone else's sake, but we have learned this tree has something to give us. So every few years, every 4 years, I believe, they harvest from this tree because the tree has something to give you. But you can't go to the tree every year and harvest from this tree, because then the tree loses its meaning for us. It has its own meaning, but its meaning for us is that it creates medicine for us that we can harvest every 4 years. If we harvest more often, it loses its power to heal. It loses its power for us. Just like the artist in Malaysian traditional arts, as the shaman, as the healer, loses its power if it's only asked to keep on producing medicine, keep making work. Why do we keep making work? Because that's the system that we have, as opposed to thinking the artist makes work in season. The artist makes work because it is time to make work. So how can we change these patterns of making work so that we think in more seasonal terms? And I'll end with this idea also, it comes back in a circle all the time of tradition, that in Malaysia, the wayang kulit master, the shadow puppet master, he makes work during the monsoon season, because during the non-monsoon season, he can go out fishing, and that's how he makes his livelihood. He can catch fish, he can make fish, he can dry fish for the months when he can't go fishing. He can make kropo, which is a kind of fish cracker, and then during the monsoon months, he makes the puppets and they perform. And the performance doesn't last for 90 minutes with an intermission. It can last for 24 hours. And you go and watch it when you want, and you leave when you want. And it is, you can go behind the screen of the performance, you can sit in front of the screen. And this idea of transgressing and transforming boundaries, I think, is something I feel we talked about a little bit, but I want us to talk about it maybe a little bit more, to see artists as being or wanting to inhabit a more borderless world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. And thank you so much for reminding us how circular and how interconnected all of your time, tradition, travel, trust, and tree. I think of Haniko Tekurapa's observations and comment after the World Cafe when he says we were in this canoe. And I'm sure I'm going to do a disservice of how I described it, but definitely the sense of you have two sides that are balancing, but it's the meeting in the middle that really helps you navigate. And the water is your environment. And to some extent, following that cedar tree, as Michael says, we have to follow it. And it somehow finds its way through it. And I think we're all trying to navigate how we all fit. I want to remind us, and for those that were at the last World Summit, the 9th World Summit on Arts and Culture in Sweden, hosted by the Swedish Arts Council with us on safeguarding artistic freedom, one of the key things, aside from the polycrisis and decolonization, was also looking at the redistribution of power. And I think all of you, to some extent, have spoken about that. Atang, you speak about power in terms of how the focus has been around tourism rather than a culture and the role culture and artist and has to have in reserves. Kasmin, you talk about power, the redistribution of power, and I'm particularly drawn by a comment you made in the discussion paper, one of our authors here, who says, are we actually developing policies that are somehow reinforcing the systemic issues that we're trying to break down? And I think that was quite an important thing to reflect on as policymakers. What are we doing in all our spheres of power and influence? And are we contributors or potential gatekeepers in that redistribution of power? Emile, you spoke about that as well in terms of the urgency about the knowledge protection and how without language, you are actually disempowering and you become a byproduct of something else. And also, if you're underwater, I've seen living in Australia communities, Tuvalu, that are already having to completely relocate and not necessarily being able to relocate next to the shores in Australia because that's where real estate is most expensive. So they're being forced to live inland, which is totally an antithesis of their culture. So how do we think about those? And Joe, obviously the interconnectedness about how we all play a role in this space, in this time and navigation seems to be really important. So I guess in a way, just to sum what I'm hearing around here and the challenges that we have moving forward. So there's a series of points that we kind of looked at, and I'd like you to maybe respond in this sense of the redistribution of power. And I might ask each of you to respond to under this sort of overarching banner. So maybe I go to you, Atand, in the global issues, the environment that the challenges you're finding. What does a local impact have, and how is this this power dynamic playing out in the issues that you're facing on a day-to-day? And you did touch on some of the solutions, but what do you think today with this audience is urgent for us to consider in that redistribution of power?
Well, the question that I feel and I'm posing also is, are we communicating right? Are we doing what needs to be done? Whose voices need to be heard and whose voices are not being heard? That's it.
Very, very powerful. Let me move to Jasmine. In terms of what Atan's just saying about whose voices are not being heard, I know you've got a very important challenge and opportunity through Mondial Cult, we've heard from the ADG Otone about that we have to build this together. So some of us, or some of those that are working in the policy space that are going to be there, but many are not. What do you say to them? What is our opportunity here to rethink about the power dynamics and the influence we may have in a future that is more just and inclusive?
Bueno, well, I can think about this from my public institution. We need to take in charge from the public institution a redistribution of power, and we need to seize our powers. And many of the public institutions, what they are trying to do is to accumulate power, but we need to seize and give away our power so that culture can be more alive. Because at the end of the day, many of us think, what will be the main input of the culture? Culture cannot be enhancing the lives of people just as itself, but culture has a very specific part of culture, is questioning what is in the present, and it links things that were not connected in the past, and in a certain way reformulate what we already have in this world which already exists in this world. So in a certain way, our public institutions, we need to make policies so that people, communities, societies can have power which can go against the public institutions. That would be important. So allow society to have more power.
Go to Joe because it connects, and then I'll come back to you, Emil. So to pick up on what Jasmine has just said about the even if it's paradoxical, but the challenge of institutions needing to ensure that there's policy development that allows for that porous and risk-taking. I'm also reminded by Gertrude Stocker's a comment around artists are the most important risk takers in our society, and they need to be allowed to do that. How do we do that in a highly polarized environment? How do we do that when there's also anxiety, even by the artists, but also our cultural institutions, to want to do the right thing, but the environment is really complex? How do we safeguard that?
It's a really big question. I'm uncertain, and I suddenly felt slightly pessimistic.
It's okay.
But it's also that who are we trying to change and why? Can we change governments, the way they work and their minds? Maybe not so easily, right? And their narrative is very powerful, the narrative is very strong, and the narrative is pervasive. So we also need to create in a way, and they have a fiction of what the world is and what the world should be. So I think artists try to create a very alternative fiction to kind of make their fictional world a little bit smaller. So if you talk about how do we change the power dynamic, well, how do we make more art? Really, because the art is a counter narrative to that very big narrative that oppresses us daily, and most of the time we don't know that it's oppressing us because it's so big and it's also become such a big part of our life. Art has become this sideshow. When art used to be, and art and culture was part of who we were, it was a natural extension of our humanity. Now it's something we do in small spaces as a sideshow. But how do we make it the main show? How do we return the idea of art making as being something that everybody does? And I remember once I went to Indonesia for an art project, and I remember the people in the village where we were working looking at us very curiously, because we would go to the river and we were doing this really artistic things, and they thought we were crazy. Because every evening after work, they came and they studied the gamelan, and they played the gamelan, and they danced, because this was an extension of their world. But when you take art away, culture away from the beginnings of your life, and make it just insignificant, then of course, how can you fight back against the power dynamic? Because that's what shifted.
Thank you, Joe. Perfect segue, because it's quite interesting. Even yesterday afternoon, we were talking about the essential role of culture. And I think, Jasmine, you've also picked up, it shouldn't be a byproduct or for others. And then, Joe, you're bringing it back in. I guess a commentary to you, Emil. These sometimes feel like Western constructs of what arts and culture might be. And are we losing that horizon in terms of, in your context, the sort of the cultural revival and that essence that in the Pacific is very much culture and life? Have you been hearing that sort of divide, and where do you think that we might be being off cue, or moving it or losing that navigation pathway, particularly thinking of traditional knowledge and Indigenous knowledge? And second, this is a bit of a provocation, but how do you feel being told that governments don't listen? I would argue that people are behind government and they're also passionate about it. But I think it's also interesting that we look at that dynamic around the perception of who we all are in this ecosystem of policy work.
No, absolutely. I think to go back to the original question as to where power needs to sit, culture is defined in the Pacific as being the people. So, if culture defines the people and vice versa, if we are to ask where the power needs to sit, it needs to sit with the people, so that we're not running the risk, as you're saying, of culture being taken off the rails and being directed into the direction of sponsors or those that are trying to lead you in the cultural paths. I mean, I keep going back to my analogy of what we need to be doing with our culture and referencing the canoes that we have. It's not about the time that it takes you to get to the destination. In this case, it's not about the time it gets you to a place where culture stands and stands successfully, but rather the process. So in answer to the question, we need to take it back to the people that are the custodians of culture, so that we can afford to have truth and honesty in our discussions, that we're not having to worry about ulterior motives being at the table when we're trying to define where our culture needs to go. We know what our cultures are. We just need to be mindful of where it's going. That we need to have like-minded people with honest integrity at the table when we're discussing these things.
Thank you. We're going to open it up for questions. So if you can start raising your hand and make sure we've got the microphones nearby. Jasmine, I might come back to you. We've got Mondia Court coming up. We will be wrapping up the results of this World Summit and sort of handing that over. From what you've heard over the last few days, where has the penny dropped? Where are you thinking, okay, if we don't address this issue, we're going to fail? Like, what would that be? And I'm sorry to seem so reductionist, but I guess what is absolutely the thing that, I mean, we've heard about cultural rights, we've heard your vision, but what is something that is a takeaway for you? And I'll ask you each the same, and then we'll open it up.
Well, for me, it's difficult to separate the vision of what all I have heard. For example, if the different sessions I heard and listened about diversity in culture, that was repeated after and after in the different sessions. And this diversity is very important, and it needs to be at the core of every political debate, policy debates, when it needs to be. So we have been nurturing the policy debates from the 1950s, but it has its limits. We need to advance in the issues of equity, freedom, in all these issues that I already mentioned. And we need to do that work, because otherwise we'll be harming the future of arts and culture.
At least in the work of IFICA, we've tried, and we've heard from members in the policy space, we need standardization, we need cultural statistics that can be measurable. But what we're hearing is that standardization is maybe not the answer, given that what we need to ensure is that diversity that is contextual. I wonder, Atan, if maybe you could reflect on what you've been hearing in terms of that sort of critical issue, especially in the context of the fact that the realities that you've been hearing may or may not actually resonate to the context in Botswana. And so how do you translate that into something that is locally driven and relevant?
Yeah. Well, with my time being here, I've been more of a sponge, soaking in the information and squeezing out one that I feel like does not actually resonate with me. I feel like we as artists create because it's our way of life. We've got no other option but to create. We are not expecting big fat salaries at the end of it all, but it's an emotion that it's an emotion that we carry. Sometimes I think it's a burden, but one must carry something and one must be purposeful. So I feel that in most cases, we need more artists in the room because most decisions are being made on our behalf. And and that is like the most important thing. There's very few artists that come out and are in places and rooms like this. So for me, that has been like the most significant thing. And meeting other fellow artists and hearing from their experiences, their challenges, what's going on in their governments, their ministries, their foundations, their initiatives. So yeah, that has been the highlight for me actually. And also trying to find ways of connecting with like the cultural policymakers, like are they listening to their people back home? Are they listening to the artists? Are they actually engaging? Like, are they going out there? Because you can listen so much in a space and where you're at, right? Once I step out of the stage and go out there, I hear so much information. I have new ideas. But it's like for me, it's like the institutions or the governments, they need to like collaborate and start getting out there and not being stuck in their offices. It's I feel like there's so much disconnection between humanity at the moment because it's like everybody has something to say, but nobody's doing anything.
Thank you. So to segue there, Emil, are we listening? Are we truly listening? All of us, and it's not just because you're in go. But I think it's a really interesting exercise that we've been doing over the last few days, isn't it? And really to understand the nuance and the issues, the diversity is very much core, the different narratives that are at stake, and the role of AI or how we use it as a tool rather than as a driver. What's your takeaway in terms of what you've heard?
There's quite a few things that have really resonated with not just myself, but I guess with my brothers and sisters from the Pacific. But if there's anything that I take away from this, it's the need for us to continue dialogue, not just amongst our communities, like the Pacifica talking to Pacifica, but right across the board, because we've taken examples of how things have gone wrong in our many communities, but also at the same discussions, we've understood from those same speakers what they've done to correct it. Collaboration is really important. We live in a global society and the globe is getting smaller and smaller by the day. And when we start sharing the issues that we have with each other with honesty and good intentions, I think we can all come out as much better people. For the Pacific, I feel that we need to be at the table a little bit more. If not at the big table, then at our own table, that we can really strengthen our position in this global community. As I said at the beginning, I'm a little bit disheartened that this 35% of the Earth's surface is not represented fairly here for whatever reason. But I think one of those reasons is not having a tangible understanding of the benefits from being a part of Ifaka. I might be digressing here a little bit, but again, I think we do need to educate our people and make them understand that being at the table gives you a voice, not being at the table doesn't. Thank you.
What are your thoughts, Joe, from what you've been hearing in terms of this urgency?
sorry, when Emila was speaking, I was thinking about the fact that 25% of the 35%, that's a big percent. And so it made me think about water, right? And I agree that we can talk a lot about art, but if we're not also looking at the idea of the Earth's surface and climate change, then we're really, that's the elephant in the room, or that's what we're not talking about as much as we should, because I think that is the most urgent thing that's facing us. And I think about migration. I mean, I think about migration a lot, whether people are forced to migrate or not, that as there will be more refugees. There's already a refugee crisis in the world because of all the wars that are facing us right now. When people migrate in large numbers very quickly, there's often a lot of misunderstanding, disagreement. People then go into their own silos of, well, this is my culture. If you come, you're going to change my culture, as opposed to us all acknowledging that culture is a changeable thing. Culture is not one thing. Culture has become enriched by the movement of people. So as we deal with climate issues and as we deal with the refugee crisis, I think that is on the horizon. We need to think about water and how that's going to become a very limited resource the more that we go into the future. And then that makes me think about AI and how AI is using up so much water, and we're not thinking about the effects of that AI. And again, why are we using it? What medicine does it create for us? Are we overusing it? What is our relationship to it? Yes, it's a tool, but it's also maybe in its own way a tree. And we have to think of it as being that.
Thank you for that. And definitely a tree where, as Michael Running-Wolf says, that we don't necessarily have to go to the big tech companies. We can look at a community-based, expert-curated, bottom-up, where the ownership of that content is within that community. So we'll open it up. We have a few minutes to take any questions from the floor. Yes? Can you go back? Stanley? And then, sorry, was the front? Tony. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Magdalena. And thank you very much to the panelists that you have gathered and the wonderful presentations that they've just rendered to us. Without necessarily underscoring the presentations that we have just heard, I would have preferred to have the leadership of the chapters as the last panelist. More so because the function and the composition of the IFACA arrangement is that it is represented by the chapters. I would have fancied a situation where the leadership will sit up front and then make presentations on the context of the deliverables, among other things on the principles that we have been sharing and debating in the past X number of days. That's creating a roadmap to say what are the deliverables of the IFACA chapters in the next 2-3 years. If we talk AI, policy and strategy, what are they going to be doing in the next 2-3 years with regards to each chapter, given the rise of the AI, artist mobility, cultural policies, and other related topics that were discussed. I would definitely have my view on the context that each chapter delivers on a particular presentation or code that was discussed, without necessarily saying the order of priority should be like this, but obviously to say on all these issues that we navigated on, what is each chapter going to be doing? In football, they normally have the same arrangement, but every after 2, 3, 4 years, they'll come back and say, the World Cup is coming. What has each region done? Each region goes through qualifiers and stuff like that. But can we borrow that same context, that same principle, and apply it at IFACA to say, in the next 2-3 years, we'll be waiting for the next summit. but what is each chapter going to be doing to address the issues that, we've been navigating in the past X number of days? My submission is very clear, giving deliverables and mandates to each chapter so that we come closer. Someone was making a presentation and say, yes, we've just finished our summit. What is going to be happening in the next 2-3 years? Are we going to be quiet and rise up again after 3 years and attend the summit? My submission is very clear. Can we have deliverables for the chapters so that for the next 3 years, we'll come back and report? But also, the upcoming media culture is also another advantage to say, can we build onto that so that we have side meetings for the chapters to deliver on specific items and specific principles that have been discussed during the past X number of days. I thank you.
Thank you, Stanley, very much. For those that may not know what Stanley is referring to from the Arts Council of Eswatini, the regional chapters are the regional chapters of IFICA, of which we have 5: Africa, Asia, Americas, Europe, and the Pacific. It's an interesting proposal. We don't normally share what is shared amongst members in Chatham House rules, but certainly as part of our reporting to Mondia Cult and the deliberations of this World Summit, we will be looking at regional roadmaps and what all of our government agencies have prioritized. Thank you very much for your intervention. I believe we've got Tony in the front. And we have been working systematically of gathering information. The roundup that happened this morning are all sort of feeding into our World Summit report. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Magdalena. I'd like to reflect a little bit on the relationship and power dynamics you referred to earlier. And first and foremost, I'd like to acknowledge the work which every arts council and cultural agency across the globe is actually doing. There are a lot of representatives here today, and most of the conversations were kind of very selfless in a way, talking about the artists. But I think it's also important to reflect a little bit about the value and importance of these organizations and the impact they actually have in their respective communities. So thank you on behalf of whoever should be thanking you. But I would also like to acknowledge another T, perhaps, and add the temporary. Institutions come and go, and sometimes they go for political reasons, because of political reasons. I also want to acknowledge the fact that there are people who are not present here today, either because their budgets have been cut, or their institutions have disappeared, or else their role has been completely eliminated, just because their government does not believe that the existence of an arts council or cultural agency should be there, or that there should be a type of cultural agency or arts council. So this kind of creates a bit of in terms of the future, and for the guardians, I would call them, of cultural rights. These guardians, how do we safeguard that these cultural leaders are actually supported in their work, in working in environments where their own governments may not want to support internationalization, may not want to support diversity, may actually be asked to eliminate voices, be they queer voices, be it migrant voices, be it any voices that talk about climate change. We talk about sometimes being in a challenging environment. I think it's time to start acknowledging that we may also be living in dangerous environments, not just for culture, not just for cultural rights, but also for human expression itself. So my open conversation is, how do we support the cultural leaders in this room, the future cultural leaders, to really be the guardians of these cultural rights together?
Thank you, Tony. Thank you very much. We are certainly talking with our members, and arts councils and ministries of culture. Every country is different, and we completely respect their dynamic. I guess we have 2 here. I wonder, Jasmine, whether I might throw it to you. You've got a new department, the cultural rights, and I believe what Tony's picking up on is that fragility. We're certainly seeing cultural institutions, even at the national level, being questioned as to, we heard from our colleagues in in Poland, and certainly from Brazil, what happened during periods when ministries are closed. So how do we policymakers can ensure that the values and that support for culture remains even in this fragile environment and unpredictability? Any other questions? Sí, por favor, responde.
Yes, let me see. That would be one of my main worries. We had the opportunity to talk about this, how design strategies, long-term strategies in culture, because they are very important, just like education. So sometimes political stability is important. And in Spain, we have this new directorate from 1 year ago. We have our policies, not because they are in resonance with the necessity of cultural policies. But what we do here is very complicated. We think that we need to rush ourselves to finish our work before time comes up, because, for example, one can come, he's counting numbers until we can run as fast as we can before they close the door. That is what we are feeling right now. We have to work very fast because maybe something changes and we have to stop working here right now. So when thinking about what will be remaining after all this work, and this is the context in which we are living right now. So we can think about strategies amid this context. One could be having the support with technicians that composes our department, because they will just keep on the legacy that we do. And also at technical levels, we can solve many of the problems too. And also the projects, when there are a lot of agents, it's more difficult to do work. For example, the private sector, other levels from the ministry, other departments, it becomes much more complicated. Therefore, and also we have another issue. When we have a new government, they want to do new things that are very visible. But what is relevant is to weave a more discrete process, more than changing organizations and creating new departments or do some capacity building. That sometimes is very visible, but if we do well our work, that will remain itself without changing.
Actors in the ecosystem is also really critical to maintain that level of engagement and gentle pressure, I guess, also to make sure that things don't disappear, and that there are processes and whether programs available. Michael, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. So we've heard a lot about the challenges and struggles we're having to advance our objectives and cultural values, but what does success look like? And what evidence do we have that we're making progress today?
Can I maybe start by asking you, what do you think success looks like? And then I'll throw it back. Sorry.
I feel like I've overexposed.
All right, well, maybe think about it. If there's time, I'll come back to you and see if you agree with
I would say when indigenous voices are being elevated, but I feel overexposed as an indigenous person.
Okay. Never. Joe, what does success look like?
I'm going to take it back to this idea of time, right? We're always trying to rush. Governments change, as you said, and then because governments change, everybody feels they must rush within this small structure. Maybe success can look like, if we look at time in a much longer way, that we're planting seeds now for the future. we don't need to see the content. I was talking to somebody yesterday and I was saying, we're so driven by content as opposed to planting. And so we want to fund the art, but I rather would say fund the artist. And the artist is not a singular thing, and the artist is not something which doesn't change. I was saying to a friend that I like this idea that you have in Japan of fish, and that fish are called different names during different seasons, because who I was 20 or 30 years ago is not the same person that I am now. So I should have a different name in a way, because I've changed. So you don't fund the work I do, you don't fund the work, just the content of the artist, you fund the artist, because the artist is the thinker, the critical thinker, just as you might fund an economist in the work of an economist, you fund the artist. That's what I would see as success, I think.
Emil, what does success look like for you?
I'd like to hear Michael's answer to that question.
All right, so
no, but I have an impression on what that success looks like, and if not for the room, then definitely for the Pacific and most definitely for the Cook Islands. It's being able to, as you're saying, recognize that time is the boundary in which we do things, but we need to also be able to place our priorities on an agenda that is created by the people, that it transcends governments, that it sits across any change in power. And it goes back to what I was talking about before, that define culture, and culture is the people. Put the power back into the people, that the agendas of government, whoever they are, is driven by the people. Our needs for culture will change, as you've rightly said, but there are fundamental aspects of our culture which cannot change, and that is the identity of who we are, and that is language. Place it in the hands of the people, and we should be okay. We should be okay.
Thank you. Atan, what does success look like?
So for me, success, for me, success would look like, from my point of perspective, also coming from Botswana, is storytelling. The importance of telling our stories and sharing our stories, and success looks like collaboration across borders. Yeah.
Thank you. Yasmin?
What is the success? I think success is have the possibility to continue doing things. Go on, going on.
Is that we need space, we need time, very conscious that time means different things to different people. We don't need to be rushed. The urgency is to stop and pause and make sure that those diversities of voices and storytelling is there. And I think that sounds like a thread through the entire summit. So Michael, what does success look like to you? You're not getting off the hook.
That's a tough question, which is why I asked, actually. I think success to me is the youth feeling empowered with agency to be who they want to be and create the art that they want to create, and think in the language that they want to be, versus what's being imposed upon them by culture.
You started our journey as the first speaker, and this was not staged in any way, but it feels a very natural way to end. And I've got 50 seconds, but I'm actually not going to use that time because I think we should finish with Michael's thoughts. We work in arts and culture, and nobody's going to fight more than us. So let's keep fighting. Thank you to this wonderful panel. And thank you all. Now, I will ask you to please make your way because we're going to move to the final remarks, and I'll need Mr. Chong and Ms. Danielson to come and join me on stage. So thank you very much once more. Big round of applause. Thank you all. Thank you. All right, it is hard to believe that we are at the very tail end. What a journey, Mr. Chong. It is such an honor to be sharing the stage here with you. So I'm moderating this last session, and I will immediately hand over to our esteemed host, who not only has looked after us in such an incredible way, you've fed us food. You have.
예, 여러분들 정말
Ladies and gentlemen, so exactly 2 years ago, in Stockholm, the journey began. And today, we have finally come to put an end to that journey. I hope that you had a relaxing, wonderful day yesterday. Good. So when you came here in the morning, outside in the plaza, you probably would have seen many young people outside gather because this particular area is a place for arts and culture. And students had a field trip to go to see a theater, a play at a theater, and I'm sure you were able to feel and see firsthand what is happening in the culture and art scene in Korea. So for the past few days, we had a board member meeting, and we also had a world summit and more than 30 or 30 plus sessions in order to understand the challenges that confront the culture and art scene, what are the tasks that are imposed on us, and we've also had time to explore the path towards the future through intense and in-depth discussions. This World Summit goes beyond just a mere gathering, but it has actually brought together the arts and culture community to share a sense of responsibility and the vision for the future. Today, we have seen how technical or technology development is expanding the boundaries for creative art, but is also posing a threat to the ecosystem of culture and arts. Digital environment is connecting the entire world, but at the same time, indigenous people, indigenous communities, as well as languages and memories, they're also disappearing as a result of technology development, paradoxically. And through the World Summit this time, we've also taken a look at the imbalances between and across different regions in terms of budget, infrastructure, systems, institutions, and freedom of expression and digital access. In different aspects of art and culture, we were able to see that there is inequality, equity issues. So we cannot just depend on aid. This is about justice and redistribution, and this is also a matter of genuine cultural equity, climate change and war, refugee issues. They're also within the boundaries of art. Even against this backdrop, art did not remain silent, but it documented, it advocated, it provided a ground for healing and dialogue. Culture and art is just not a decorative form, but it is a driving force for transformative changes across society. We were able to realize that critical point once again. At where we are, in the language that we speak, culture and art must be practiced in different forms. Now we have to go beyond merely posing a question. We have to call for action, and we have to be united in solidarity. IFACA going forward as well will focus on collaborative work for young generations, protecting cultural diversity, and addressing technological gap, and also for sustainability. IFACA will continue to work on practical solutions, bringing the public and private sector and regions and the world. Arts Council of Korea will also use this as an opportunity to further expand our international collaboration programs and also work towards cultural solidarity by presenting practical models. for collaboration. Last but not least, I'd like to thank Chair Ifaka, Kristen Danielson, as well as Executive Director Magdalena Mujica, and also staff members of Ifaka. Thank you very much for your hard work. When we first hosted Ifaka World Summit and asked for a budget from the Korean government, what happened was that the budget that was allocated to us was actually only one half of what we requested of the government. And we first wonder how we can successfully organize this event with such a limited budget. We had a lot of concerns. However, the executive director of IFACA, as well as our ARCO council, all our staff members came together to seek sponsorship and also to do our legwork to complete this journey successfully. Why don't we give a big round of applause to the staff members for their arduous work and hard efforts? And also in preparing for the World Summit and for different panels, insights have been shared by panelists and speakers and moderators. Thank you very much for your intervention and your effort. Art does not turn a blind eye to the suffering of the times. It works to build a better and a just society for all. Now it is time to say goodbye, and I want to say thank you to everyone. The change that we have created today, I hope will continue and be sustained in the future. Until we meet again, we'll be acting in our own places and we will be connecting with one another. Thank you.
Kristen, the floor is yours. Well, thank you. I'm hearing myself. Just a second. I love the fact, Mr. Chong, that you say, until we meet again. I think that's a very nice way of parting. And even though it's always a little bit sad when this big event is over, there is so much to build on. I've been thinking about these closing remarks, and I'm a kind of person who really needs a little bit of time to digest. So it's a little bit too soon for me to say, what was this like? But there are a couple of things that I would like to simply repeat from the opening panel session that I was so lucky to moderate. Because we asked some really big questions, didn't we? We are chartering the future for culture and arts. That's not a small task. And we asked the panelists, what are the non-negotiables if we are going to charter the future, if we're going to show leadership into the future? And I'd just like to repeat 3 of them that I will definitely work with. The first one is to resist the war on diversity. That's a non-negotiable. We, as agents, yes, we are agents of culture and arts in so many different nations, and we have the agency to insist and to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in everything we do, simply because we can, so we have to do it. I also think, Alexandra Santaki, you talked about the narrative of increasing that space of diversity and seeking the national narrative or the national cultural identity. And that's just never going to work. And we have to resist that. And I listened in to Roy Sheen of Arts Council Northern Ireland. If she's not here, I'd like to quote her, because she also said, cultural identity is constantly evolving and it needs to be constantly negotiated. And we have to make sure that that happens. And if we are 90 members in 70 countries and we decide that we will resist the war on diversity, it's a pretty strong force. So I'm taking that with me as point number 1.
And also the fact that cultural rights really do matter. And it's nothing we can take for granted. And we need to trust the framework that exists and use the legislation and implement it wherever we come from. And also, I think Yari Kamara, if you're here, you said it very beautifully from the panel. We need to speak truth to power. And I believe you said we need that madman. And I would like to say that sane woman, that sane, very important artist, daring to speak truth to power, and that we always fight to keep the artistic freedom. And finally, we need to believe in multinationalism. In this time where people want to build walls, whether it's walls of tariff, concrete walls, we need to make sure that we continue to really fight. I heard you say that, to fight that we believe in international collaboration, just like what we are doing here in this room. And then I have this one reflection that I'd like to share with you, which is one more on a personal level, because what we have put on the agenda is to insist on diverse narratives and to bring indigenous voices to the table, which means a lot to me personally, because in Norway, we are currently in the middle of a truth and reconciliation process, recognizing the nation of Sápmi, of the Sami people. And I think that has made a big difference at this summit. And yesterday, I was listening into a very wonderful conversation with indigenous voices from India, Chile, New Zealand, and Norway. And what really sat with me was the relation to land and the mindset of inherit the land from your ancestors and then borrowing it from your children. And what you do in saying that is that you remove the ego from your actions. Am I right? Yeah, I see you nodding, because I was reflecting on this together with Ingelil, and it's a really, really powerful thing to do, to remove the ego. And then there was a question earlier on today, how can we do this? And I'm thinking for me and for us as executives, chairs, top management, we have agency as leaders. So if I try and test indigenous knowledge on my work, saying that I inherit my position from my predecessor and I borrow it from my successor, that removes my ego as a leader. And removing ego from leadership in this time and this day and age, that could be quite powerful. And I would like to be working on that in my everyday life, and I will try and do that. So, and I have team members with me, so you can tell me whether. So I just really want to thank you for that, because if you remove ego from leadership, you also make sure that you focus on leadership is never about the leader, it's about the community you manage to create. And I do hope, I sincerely hope that we have managed to create community. As leaders of this summit, I hope we have succeeded in creating community. And the good thing about Ithaca in this world where governments come and go, agencies start and they are ended and we need to rebuild them, I hope that Ithaca can be a consistent platform, a consistent community where we, until we meet again, Mr. Chong, can continue this conversation. So thank you for the indigenous insight. That meant a lot to me.
Thank you. Speaking of leadership, when we started this journey, you reminded us of where Korea was many decades ago and the solidarity that the international community gave, in your words. And now the Republic of Korea has been such a leader in supporting and being, having that solidarity with other countries. I know, Chem Chong, that has also been a very important part of giving back, as you say. We've had the opportunity to get to know Korean delegates. We've had the opportunity to visit your incredible cultural spaces. We've had the opportunity to be at the Marinier Park, and there's still some more to come. And we cannot thank you enough for getting a sense and getting to know this beautiful country, this incredible people, and that we know for many, this is the first of many visits. On that note, we have a small present for you that we'd like to give you.
Oh. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
감사합니다.
A big thank you from me. Thank you very much.
So on day one, I handed over custodianship to you all. Thank you for looking after it, for the trust, the time, the travel from places, those journeys, for being part of that tree. And now it's not that I take it back, it continues to be yours until we meet again for the next World Summit, which we don't know yet where it will be, but rest assured you will know soon. This is about building community and about expanding. And please feel like if this is your first time, let it not be your last, and find multiple ways that you continue to either engage with us and also engage with all the delegates that you've met here before, during this period. That is our commitment to dialogue, and that is also about bringing all the different people that are working and are passionate about arts and culture, and especially in the policy sphere, together. The topics don't die after each summit. We're still concerned about artistic freedom from the last World Summit, and we will continue to be concerned about how we chart the future and take on the issues that have come up here. We will be at Mondia Cult, and we really hope that we capture all your thoughts through the post-summit report and our presentation of the dossier. And last but not least, as Mr. Chong said, this has been a very long journey, and we would really like to thank some people. We'd like to thank the IPAC, the International Program Advisory Committee, Jingjun Lee, Pooja Sood, Plen Prim, Octavio Kulis, Alphonse Karabuda, Khadija Elbanui, and Sarah Bushra. We'd like to thank the authors of the discussion paper, Jasmine Beidak, Sarah Bushra, Paula Ka, Haniko Tekurapa, Mauricio Delfin, Laz Ebert, Marcela Flores, and Dr. Soon Lee, Dr. Nisha Shah, and Marito Delano. We'd like to thank Sylvie Duran and Alistair Evans. You have no idea how hard they have worked. We are eternally grateful for their thoughtfulness and their generosity in trying to do justice to all your great conversations. To all of our speakers, to all of our table hosts, and to all of you delegates that have made a very long journey to get here. We also want to thank MCI Korea, the production team that has been incredible working behind the scenes, and they really do deserve a round of applause. Can you get up? And then last but not least, to the ARCO team. The ARCO team have been really incredible. And Mr. Chong, we have some certificates for your team. If it's possible, we'd like to bring Miss Yu to the table, to the stage. Thank you so much for your leadership and for all your incredible work.
I'll give you this.
A certificate to Subin Jeong. To Subin Jeong.
We move to the middle, he asks.
Oh, sorry.
Subin.
To Subin.
There you
Jeong.
are.
Yeah.
왜
To
다단
Hyung
쓰고
Hee
나왔어?
Jun.
Thank you.
To Sunny Jung. You've seen them running around everywhere.
Thank you.
Here, oh.
이거 가지고 가야지.
To Sarah Chung.
Thank you.
To June Park.
저쪽으로 더 가라고. 저쪽으로 쓰는 거야? 일로.
And to Serang Kim. And then many more also, Mr. Kiwon from the research and so many more other members.